Hey guys, how you doing? This is Corporal Mujahid Ramzzaddin, first responder who was shot to death in Prince George's County, Maryland while responding to a domestic violence call where he saved a young lady's life by taking bullets for her. That's him at his burial. He's an Islamic individual who was buried by Islamic law. Glenn Tyndall was the gentleman who shot the officer to death in cold blood and was shot to death by officers. This is Nikolas Cruz, a school shooter. As you can see right there, he's also in court at his killer as an arraignment court there. And next is the Broward, the coward of Broward, Deputy Scot Peterson. He refused to go into school while Nikolas Cruz was killing 17 people. That's the sheriff who fired that gentleman. And Donald Trump basically got on TV and co-signed that gentleman certainly did not do a good service that day. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How you guys doing? This is Mike McCormick with Advanced Criminology here in Owings Mills, bringing you another criminal justice issue that certainly needs to be discussed in terms of law enforcement and responsibilities and duties of first responders when they arrive at a scene, particularly law enforcement officers who have been trained to confront criminal suspects, armed and unarmed. You guys have been following the recent school shooting down in Florida, and I just showed you several photos and still shots of what I decided to put together today as to those first responders who are considered heroes and those first responders who are considered zeros. In this case here, we're going to start off with really a touching event here in Maryland, in PG County, that occurred on the 21st of February, early in the morning, around 10, where a PG County police officer who was off duty with his family received a sudden knock at his door. He responded and spoke to the lady at the door, and she informed him that her boyfriend had pointed a weapon at her and she was scared for her life. This PG County officer decided to, as all heroes do, decided to respond to this event, not knowing what the outcome would be. I will tell you that he is a decorated police officer in Prince George's County, Maryland. A Medal of Valor is what he won several years ago. He's also a former Marine. Of course, I love him just because he was a Marine. And because he was a Marine, I'm not even going to talk about him being a police officer just yet, but because he was a Marine before he became a police officer, he met the challenge like all Marines are supposed to do when confronted with evil, when confronted with destruction, when confronted with the enemy. You take the battle to the enemy. You don't wait for the enemy to take the battle to you. And that's what this gentleman did on the 21st of February. He risked his life and it subsequently saved another person's life and was shot to death. Now, he leaves behind a wife and 4 children. He knew what the consequences might be, and he still ran out of his house early in the morning to assist a citizen in distress. That's my kind of guy. I will tell you right now, and I think most of Americans are not aware that on our police departments, not everyone is capable of being a first responder. Not everyone is capable of going in a building to save and rescue you. I will tell you that that's the difference, and that's what separates those police officers who take this job serious and those police officers who don't. I keep telling you guys on every single video that being a cop is not an easy job, particularly when you are confronted with the enemy. There's an old saying, and that saying goes like this: a soldier never knows his strength until he meets his foe. I'll say it again. A soldier never knows his strength until he meets his foe. Now, if you didn't know about this officer, I will give you more background. This officer, his name is Mujahid Ramzzaddin. He's a Muslim, been a Muslim all his life, and he was given an Islamic burial according to those folks who follow the Islamic faith. His faith had nothing to do with him going out that door that morning. It had to do with his training, and it had to do with his training in the military. Is why he responded, to save someone else's life. That's a hero. That's the definition of a hero, my friends. You don't have to look that up in the dictionary, because actions speak louder than words. Take my glasses off. Okay. What we need to do is also focus back on February the 14th, where I showed you a photo of Nikolas Cruz, who was the shooter who shot and killed 17 students and teachers. I also showed you a photo of him being arraigned in court on 17 counts of murder charges. Now, Nicolas Cage was not shot down. He turned himself in. He was confronted by a sheriff, and he turned himself in. The killer of Corporal Ramzzaddin refused to turn himself in, and as protocol, he was shot to death, as he should have been. Now, Nikolas Cruz. Let's talk about Nikolas Cruz for a minute. Nikolas Cruz had issues. We all know. The news has reported he had mental problems. We all know that there was maybe 20 attempts for him to, the things that he was doing that was not ordinary as a young person. There were signs all over the place according to the news. I'm just reporting what the news said, that there were signs that this kid was trouble, that he had made threats, so forth and so on. Now, he decided to carry out his threats on 14th of February 2018 at a high school he used to attend. Now, here's where the zero comes in. We already said Corporal Ramzzaddin was a hero. By all accounts, I love him to death. However, here's where the zero comes in terms of being a first responder. That if you and I were in that school, or if you and I were being held hostage in a bank, or if you and I were being held gunpoint on a corner at night, on a street holdup, you certainly wouldn't want this officer to respond. This officer failed. He failed drastically. And I'll tell you why. This officer was the school resource officer. Okay? School resource officer. And his job as a school resource officer, in the event that there is an emergency in that school, he's there to respond and abate that problem. And his name is Deputy Scot Peterson of the Broward County Sheriff's Department. He's 54 years old, and he's been on the police department, imagine this, since 1985. Now, if anybody has experience in terms of law enforcement experience, in terms of being a first responder, certainly this guy would have fit the bill just based on his time on the police department. However, when the shots rang out and kids were screaming for their lives and being shot down like dogs in their classroom, this individual decided that it was better for him and safer for him to stay outside of the school than respond inside of school. Therefore, I have dubbed him the coward of Broward, because that's what he is. And I want him, if he sees this video, to know that's what he is a coward. You cannot stand by as a police officer in this day and age, with all the issues that we have in this country with shootings, and let children get gunned down like dogs, as I just said, and not respond. You deserve to be fired. Instead of being fired, you decided to resign. And I will tell you, ladies and gentlemen, most police officers, when they get in trouble and they're offered the option to resign, they take it. And they take it because it's all tied to their pension. That's why they take it. Don't let them tell you anything different, because that's what when the commission puts this information in front of them. Okay, you got two choices, buddy. You can either be fired or you can resign. They always opt out to resign. And that's just the way it is in policing and law enforcement across this country. I've got dozens and dozens, if not hundreds, of those types of reports that show why officers resign when confronted with being fired. Now, I also have a picture of the Broward County Sheriff. And this gentleman, I have to commend him because he's been on top of the shooting ever since it happened. And he was also the first person that decided that he was going to recommend that this gentleman be fired. Because he basically said, listen, this is not what we get paid to do. We get paid to save lives and protect property. And he's exactly right. And for some reason or other, a lot of police seem to forget what that mission statement means. They seem to forget that one day you might be called to save someone's life. What will you do? How will you respond? And will your training kick in? And will you remember your training? Or, in this case here, you don't do nothing. And so he remains, in my eyesight, as the coward of Broward. Donald Trump weighed in on this, and he made mention. He didn't specifically come out and say it, but you know how Donald Trump is. And he basically said that he was disappointed in the sheriff's response. So we can kind of read between the lines on that. Okay, now I want to take you guys back to the beginning of what I really wanted to. Well, I wanted to discuss everything, but I wanted to take you back to definitions, because there's been some controversy as to, why this guy didn't respond. What's the difference between a Corporal Ramzzaddin and the difference between this Broward County Sheriff, Scot Peterson? Balls. That's the difference. Ramzzaddin had him. Peterson didn't. Ramzzaddin saved somebody's life. Peterson allowed 17 people to die needlessly. One thing you got to understand about responding as first responders. Once you respond, you direct the shooter's attention towards you, thereby giving other people who are in distress and the threat of death the opportunity to get away. That's your job, to divert the shooter's attention so you can disrupt his flow, so you can shoot him down. That's what it's all about. Now, let's talk about definition of a first responder. Here we go. A first responder is a person that's trained in law enforcement who is responsible for immediately to be on the scene of an emergency to provide help. In addition, law enforcement officers must be trained and equipped to respond to virtually any situation, I'll underline that, any situation, including criminal acts, terrorist attacks, and effective incident response. Well, I'd have to say that on February 14th, all three were covered. Criminal acts were being conducted by Nikolas Cruz, terrorist act, as well as an effective incident response. Okay? Now, as a first responder, you must have prevention training, detection training, apprehension and detention training. Okay? And be able to investigate misdemeanors and felonies in violations of federal, state, and local law. You must know how to mitigate the preventable causes of death in real-world situations. I'll underline this again for you police officers out there who think this is a game. This is real-world situations. You're getting paid to respond. You're getting paid to lay down your life if need be. And if this is not the profession that you want to be in, you need to turn in your badge and gun today. Don't wait, because we might have another school shooting tomorrow, and we don't want another Scot Peterson to be and stand in front of the school while my son and daughter are being shot down and their heads blown off because this officer failed to respond to do his job. As you can tell, I'm kind of hot about this. I'm just not, it just doesn't make sense to me. Now, so that's my definition of first responder. Now, let's get back to Corporal Mujahid Ramzzaddin, the Muslim officer, okay? I emphasize that because that's kind of been lost in this whole thing where, the tone of this country has been, and you guys know as well as I do, that, Islam and people who practice it don't belong here. Well, I think the lady that was saved the other day would beg to differ. I think that the police officers in PG County would beg to differ. I think the citizens of PG County would beg to differ. So, having said that, talk about Scot Peterson one more time. And because you guys need to understand this and recognize these signs of someone who's a coward. They're almost always dishonest. They put up false bravado. They're constantly apologizing for their mistakes. They can be delusional oftentimes. Their every move is somewhat calculated. They shy away from confrontation. Well, we know that Deputy Scot Peterson certainly shied away from confrontation. Even after he heard children screaming for their lives, he stood outside approximately 4 minutes. Do you know what kind of damage an AR-15 weapon can do in 4 minutes? Devastating. And I believe Nikolas Cruz had 6 minutes to engage his targets and his victims in this case. 4 minutes, again, would have been where the deputy had just decided, you know what, it's better for me not to go in, basically because I'm scared. And that's what it came down to. He was scared. However, the story gets even better. And I just found that out today, so I got to report it. That not only did Deputy Peterson of the Broward County Police Department stand out there for 4 minutes and didn't do a damn thing, there were 3 other officers from the Broward County Sheriff's Department who were behind their cars as they pulled up to back up this officer. They never went in and engaged the suspect either. It wasn't until, and I'm going to commend this department down there in Florida, they're called the Coral Springs Police Department. They are the guys who decided that that's what they get paid to do, go in the building and confront the suspect, and if he's there, you shoot him dead. That's what you're getting paid to do. Again, I keep telling you, policing is a very serious game. It's not about riding around in your car for 7 out of 8 hours not doing nothing. It's not about being not non-proactive, but proactive. It's about making sure that people are safe every single day. It's about when you're in your bedroom slippers on a Wednesday morning and somebody comes and knocks on your door and says, hey, I'm being threatened with a shotgun, and you throw your slippers on and pants and jet outside with your handgun in an effort to protect somebody's life. That's what being a cop is about. Now, there's not a cop out there that will tell you that they only work the 8-hour shift. That's a lie. Cops are on duty 24/7. So if you have a cop in your neighborhood who has his car parked in the neighborhood, whether it's a complex or whether it's a regular house, and there's an issue, trust me, if he lives next door to me, I'm knocking on his door. Because I may not be able to wait for 911 to send the radio card to my house. It might be just that serious of a case where I need assistance now. And that's what officers across America are sworn to do. Uphold and protect the law 24/7. It's not a job for everybody. This is why you have at least 4,000 officers a year being terminated from police departments around the country. Because this is not a job for everybody. It takes a certain type of character to be on the police department. And Corporal Ramzzaddin had that character. 14-year vet. 14-year veteran. Medal of Valor. Great man. Great man in my estimation. Now, issues. Here are the issues. If that officer, and I'm talking about the deputy, Peterson, had taken up a position and started to move inside that building towards the shooting, let me tell you what he could have done. I said it before. He could have diverted the attention of the shooter towards him. He could have also given out coordinates over his police radio as to where he was. That way, when backup arrived, they would have known to come straight to the 2nd or 3rd floor where the shooting is going on, instead of getting there, seeing a videotape of the suspect 30 minutes earlier. That's what has been reported, that there was a videotape that was being simultaneously broadcast to the police department from the school showing the shooting, but the shooting wasn't happening. It was over already by the time officers began to go in the building and bring the suspect down. Nikolas was already gone. Nikolas Cruz was already gone from the scene. And so I'm sure that'll be something that they'll work on in terms of real time. But that's why you need a first responder. Because it's his job It's his job to be the first responder, to give out coordinates, to send out that information, that pertinent information. Again, if you follow criminology, if you follow this Mike report, if you follow, particularly in the Detective Sean Suter case, when I told you that the most important thing for the first responder is to give out a description. And if it's arms involved and shooting involved, it's your job to shoot people down. That's your job. And if you can't do it, turn the badge and gun in and give it to somebody else. Because trust me, whatever job that you do in life, there are 10 people always standing in line waiting to do your job. So don't ever think that you can't be replaced, because you can. Now, I talked about what a coward was. Oh, I didn't add that a coward also cannot face his fears. And that's why I told you, a soldier never knows his strength until he meets his foe. Well, on that day, Deputy Peterson met his foe. And that foe was his fear, not the kid that was inside the school with the gun. And a coward always plays it safe. I would suggest to you that he would probably say that he played it safe. Okay, look, I'm kind of worked up about the whole thing. I'm sorry I was kind of loud with the audio, but you know, I get upset when, you know, we pay our public servants to do their jobs. Bad enough that we have officers out here with misconduct and other issues that they shouldn't be doing. But now we have a situation here where we have officers not even responding to a sensitive and serious issue such as real-time active school shooter in America. And so again, I apologize for the way I feel about this issue, but I'm going to leave at this point. Enjoy the video. Please, if you can, share it. There's a box down to the left of the video. If you want to subscribe, we certainly appreciate it. We need everybody we can get to subscribe. And my name is Mike McCormick with Advanced Criminology. Thanks a lot, guys.